Are you pregnant and just sitting around waiting for the moment that labor will start? I know that at the end of my first pregnancy, I was constantly looking at every little twinge I felt in my body, wondering, is this labor? If it's not, when will labor start? I had never experienced labor before and it was so draining. So, in this video, we are going to go through some signs that your body might be getting ready for go time. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to my channel. If we haven't met yet, my name is Eve. I am a nurse, a doula, and a Catholic mama to two sweet babies who is super passionate about helping other women prepare for God-centered natural birth. I know that at the end of pregnancy, every single day can feel so draining and exhausting just waiting for labor to start, not really knowing what that's going to feel like, especially if you haven't experienced those sensations in your body before. Maybe you've never had a baby before, or your last was a C-section or induced, and so you've never gone into spontaneous labor and your brain is just so focused on wanting to know when it's going to be go time that every single twinge might feel like it could be the start of labor. The following things I am going to share with you are potential signs that your body could be getting ready to go into labor, but just remember that everybody's experience is going to be unique. And just because you experience one of these or a combination of these doesn't necessarily mean that labor is going to be starting within the next day or two, but it definitely could. The first sign is lightning. Now, lightning is when your baby drops lower into your pelvis and engages. This can happen a few weeks before labor ever starts, especially in first-time moms. It's more likely to hold off, even sometimes into labor for second time or consequent babies. This is also referred to as baby dropping. So if this happens to you, you might notice that you can start to breathe a little bit easier, usually because there is less pressure on your diaphragm from baby up in your ribs. You might even be able to fit a few fingers up here in between your rib cage and your bump. But then you might also notice that there is a lot more pressure on your bladder and that you're peeing more frequently because baby has moved from a higher position in your belly to a lower position. Once you experience lightning or your baby dropping, it's a sign that with baby's head being engaged, their head is going to be more applied to the cervix, therefore putting more pressure on the cervix and helping your body start to dilate and get ready for labor. So if this happens to you, it's a sign your body could be gearing up. Sign number 2 is increased Braxton Hicks. Now, Braxton Hicks are different from real labor contractions. And if you've never experienced either before, I want you to go check out the video I recently posted. I'll link it up here, and that will help you tell the difference between real labor contractions versus Braxton Hicks contractions. Braxton Hicks contractions are often referred to as practice contractions because they help your body get ready for the real thing. Unlike true labor contractions, they're usually irregular and not crampy in the same way, and they aren't necessarily thought to contribute to cervical dilation or your body opening up to have baby, but they do help your body get ready in some other ways, like helping guide baby into an optimal position for birth and helping to tone and strengthen your uterus for when labor does really start. Some women have Braxton Hicks all the way through pregnancy up until labor starts, and some women never experience a Braxton Hicks until real labor. So it kind of depends on your unique body and circumstance, which of these camps you might fall into or somewhere in between. But if you notice Braxton Hicks picking up and happening all the time, it could be a sign that your body's getting ready to go into labor. Now, even though Braxton Hicks aren't real labor, they could turn over at some point and become real labor contractions. So again, if you want to learn more about the difference between Braxton Hicks and real labor contractions, you can check out that video here. The third sign your body might be getting ready to go into labor is if you lose your mucus plug. Now, this is just about as glamorous as it sounds. The mucus plug is essentially a thick glob of mucus that sits in the opening of the cervix throughout your pregnancy to protect baby from the outside world. As your body is preparing to go into labor, your cervix is actually doing a whole bunch of things to get ready for that to happen. So some of those things include thinning out, softening, changing positions, and then lastly, the one that we're all very familiar with, which is opening. And as your cervix begins to open or dilate a little bit, sometimes that mucus plug that sits in that opening will start to fall out. And this can either happen all at one time or in little pieces. The mucus plug can either be kind of like a pale yellow color or even sometimes a little bit pink or blood tinge. And this process can start to happen days before labor or even weeks before labor. But with some women, they notice a correlation that as soon as their mucus plug falls out, that means labor is on the immediate horizon. However, if you don't know that to be a sign that's true for your body, definitely don't go rush off to your birth location. I wouldn't go rush off to your birth location either way, just because your mucus plug falls out. But just take note of it and know this could be a sign your body's getting ready. Something interesting about the mucus plug is that it can actually regenerate itself over time. So you can start to lose those little pieces earlier on in pregnancy, and it can actually build itself back up until your body does start to open and get ready for baby. Anyways, this could be a sign that your body is starting to dilate and get ready for baby, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the timing. The fourth sign that you might be getting ready to go into labor is experiencing soft stools or diarrhea. Now, the reason that this happens when your body is about to go into labor is actually because of a substance produced by the body called prostaglandin. Not to get too nerdy on you, but prostaglandins are actually lipid compounds that have an effect on human tissue, such as your cervix and your uterus, but they also have an effect on the GI system. Prostaglandins actually increase in our body the closer we are to term during our pregnancies. They play a big role in ripening our cervix and getting it ready for labor. But as those prostaglandins increase and have an effect on our cervix, they also can have an effect on our GI system and cause you to have loose stools or diarrhea. A fun fact, actually one of the medications used to induce labor in the hospital is called Cervidil, and it's essentially just prostaglandin, but in a more concentrated dose than your body typically makes on its own. There is also prostaglandin found in human I don't know if I want to say that. Prostaglandin is also one of the reasons that it's recommended to be intimate with your spouse in order to help labor begin. For a lot of women, diarrhea is one of the first signs that labor is actually starting. So if you start to notice this happen to you, it could be a sign your body is ramping up prostaglandin production and getting your cervix ready for labor as well. Number 5 is a sudden random increase in energy. A lot of people will call this the nesting instinct, and I definitely think it is true. For some women, it lasts all through their third trimester, but for a lot of women, they will notice this sudden increased urge to go clean the baseboards or pack the diaper bag or make sure that the car is all clean. So if you notice that it's 9 p.m. and you suddenly have the strongest need in the world to go and declutter your closet, it might be a sign that labor is around the corner. Now, last but not least, the sixth sign that you might be going into labor soon is if your water breaks. Now, this is different from the other 5 signs in the sense that this is not going to happen very long before labor begins. If your water breaks, it is a sure sign that labor is starting soon. But the reason that I included this is because just because your water breaks doesn't actually mean you are in labor yet. And I see a lot of women make this mistake. Their water breaks and they go rush off to the hospital thinking that that means they are in labor. However, if your water breaks but contractions have not yet started, this is called premature rupture of membranes, and it does not mean that you are actually in labor yet. Your water breaking can happen like a big gush in the movies sometimes if it is the part of the water bag that sits in front of baby's head, but a lot of the time it will actually just be like a steady trickle. So for this to happen before contractions begin actually usually only occurs about 10% of the time. Most of the time, your water is more likely to break later into active labor or even your transition or pushing. But if this does happen to you, evidence actually tells us that it is perfectly safe to wait for a little bit to see if labor begins on its own before rushing off to your hospital and being induced with Pitocin. Now, of course, everybody's situation is going to be unique, so this depends on a lot of factors such as, is baby preterm at this point, or is mom's GBS positive? So don't take this as individualized medical advice, but I would definitely recommend looking into what you can do if your water breaks before contractions begin. With all of these things in mind, I want you to remember that every single one of these is just a sign that you could be getting ready to go into labor. They don't necessarily tell us that you are going to go into labor within the next day, 2 days, or 3 days even. I have known women, including myself, who've experienced all of these things for literal weeks before labor ever started, and some women who've experienced none of them and then had a baby in their arms shortly. I know that can be so hard to hear, especially if you just want an answer about when you can expect to meet your baby. But remember that this waiting period is being used to prune you and perfect you into the mother that you are meant to become. And your waiting and your impatience is not for nothing. As hard as it can be at the end of pregnancy, try to soak in these last days before you finally have your baby baby in your arms, and trust that your body was designed for this by God and knows exactly the right timing for your baby to be born. Remember that the only way to know for sure if you are in labor is if you are having progressing contractions that are growing longer, stronger, and closer together and that don't stop. I hope that this video helped you to gain some knowledge and hopefully a little bit of peace about what to expect when your body is getting ready for go time. And if you're about to have a baby soon, please know my prayers for you. I appreciate you stopping by this video, and I hope to see you back here next time.